Hi, everybody, and welcome to the DogCo Secrets Podcast. My name is Michelle Kline. I am your host, and I am excited to be here with you today. I am also the founder of DogCo Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. So I'm doing this new content series on the scaling phases of pet care businesses. I'm on this mission to define more of these blueprints out for companies. It won't solve all the problems, but hopefully more of a defined pathway on I'm here and I want to get to here. So I have been studying and working with pet care businesses all the way from brand new startup to 7 figures and beyond. So 7 figures plus. And really looking at what are these concrete stages that companies go through, at which revenue levels and at what team size, and then how can I help companies from here get to the next level. So that has been a big project for me this year. That's where I'm putting a lot of my time and strategic work into my business and into the content that I'm putting out. I did a teaser podcast on this maybe 20 episodes ago now. I think it was episode 20. Where I went through, here are the frameworks I've been exploring. And that was really well received. I got a lot of feedback, like that was helpful for me. So I figured I would dive into each of those phases more deeply as I have been continuing to learn more and develop more tools. So I'm excited to get into it. Today, I want to focus on scaling teams that are between $100,000 and $200,000 in revenue. Last week, I focused on 0 to 100,000. The episode next week will be 200,000 to 300,000. I have found that this is a really distinct phase for pet care businesses. And all of these phases are really unique, distinct, and different from each other. So I wanted to break down a little bit about what I see in this phase, what risks you should be keeping your eye on, and what are areas that you can apply strategic leverage to get ahead and to break through some of the barriers really at that 200,000 revenue mark. That is where I see a lot of companies get stuck, is kind of dancing around that revenue point. And so I want to talk about ways that we can escalate into the next phase. So when I am looking at 100,000 to 200,000-ish in revenue for a pet care business, annual revenue, that's characterized by a few different things. And I do want to qualify the numbers I'm using are rough estimates. Some companies are going to hit some of these barriers earlier than these revenue points. Some companies are going to get to higher revenue, especially if the owner is throwing a lot at it before they hit some of the barriers I'm going to talk about. So these are general approximations that I've seen, but overall I have seen this as distinct patterns in the work that I have done. So just keep that in mind. These aren't necessarily concrete, but they are more generalizations. In the 100,000 to 200,000 range, typically what I see the owner has started building a team at this point. We are somewhere in the ballpark, most likely, depending on the size of your business, between 3 and 7 team members. I know some businesses that are much bigger than that run with that many staff. They've figured out how to do that really efficiently. I've worked with smaller businesses under 100K that have 10 people doing very, very small amounts of work. But that's kind of the general team size that I see, 3 to 7 team members. At this point, so I'm going to be real with y'all. I think this was the hardest season in my pet care business, just to be totally candid, for the next qualifier of this category, which is the owner is 1 foot in the field and 1 foot in the administrative needs of the business. Typically at this revenue point, unless the owner has savings they're living off of, or maybe a partner that's covering a lot of the household bills, typically, there's not quite enough cash in the machine for the owner to be fully out of the field. They need to be subsidizing their personal income through field work, but there is enough chaos and enough of a need in the business for the owner to be, really, they could be doing just the administrative work and just focusing on growing the business full time. And they can't. So it's a season where you have to wear a lot of different hats. It can be really difficult to know how to prioritize your time. If you're a pet care business that wants to level up, then this is for you. The DogCo Business Summit is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, September 26th to the 28th. We still have tickets available, and we just announced that we are going digital. So you can get your in-person ticket or your digital ticket at dogcosummit.com. And really difficult to know what to do first and where to prioritize resources specifically. Like, do I start looking for some admin help, but I'm still really in the field, so maybe that doesn't make sense, but I need to be in the field to afford a lot of the costs that I've taken on for my business, which some of those costs, they get easier to afford as you get bigger. I know that sounded like a duh statement, but there are some fixed costs that as you get bigger, they're easier to absorb. Not all the costs in your business grow with your revenue level. And this is a season where it can be really difficult to know where to put resources which are more limited. The biggest one, I would say, being your time. That isn't to say that at bigger stages of your business, you're not going to run into that. Time is always going to be a resource that you have to really strategically allocate, in addition to money and people and skills and all of those things. But at this stage, there's a lot of friction in your model. You may not have any systems yet. The workload has most likely, unless you're in very luxury price points, outpaced what you can do yourself. And this is where a lot of businesses get stuck. A lot of businesses spiral because it's a season that takes a really large amount of effort to get out of. When I think mentally about this season, I've been thinking about rungs on a ladder when I've been building out these scaling phases for pet care businesses. I think this rung, effort-wise, is you're not just having to pull yourself to the next level, you're having to get a running start so that you can jump 4 extra feet, and you don't quite have the muscles built yet to do that full pull-up. It's just a really difficult season to exit. Now, I hope I have not depressed you, because there are ways to get out of that. I've worked with many, many companies that have. But I do want to acknowledge, if you're in this season, if you're resonating with what I'm saying, one, don't feel alone. This is a really common place in your business for it to just feel so heavy and so hard. And I think one of the difficult things is because you haven't broken this ceiling yet, you don't know when the relief is coming, and I promise that it does. It doesn't come quickly, and it doesn't come easily. But I think sometimes people reach this stage and they're like, oh God, this is what entrepreneurship is like? No, thank you. I am going to do a hard left exit because this isn't fun. And it really isn't fun. That stage isn't fun. I started to enjoy my business a lot more once I broke through that. At about 10 team members for me, with the way my numbers were set up, is when financially I could step fully out of the field. It was at about 220 annually in revenue. I was able to take home, about $50K, which is what I needed to support my family at the time. So relief is coming, because once you can remove that hat of being in the field, I have found it doesn't solve everything, but it does free up and kind of loosen that feeling of, oh my God, this is just a grind. It's a pure grind, and I don't like it. Hang in there. Let's talk about some risks of this season that are going to keep you stuck here. And then let's talk about some solutions to help get you past that 200K, where there's more money in the machine, and you then are able to take a step back and have a little bit more wiggle room, both financially and with your time. Okay, so biggest risks for getting stuck. So number one is getting stuck in what I call the whirlwind. So if you're in a DogCo program, if you've worked with me, I like to refer to just the day-to-day stuff that can really suck all of your time. It can feel like it's pulling you underwater, as the whirlwind. And the whirlwind wants to take you down. It wants to keep you answering messages all day. It wants to keep you looking at your software all day, because it's what if something goes wrong? I have to double check everything. The whirlwind is going to be what keeps you from being able to focus on actually building your business. And it's going to keep you doing these little urgent things all day long that take all of your time. And here's the really difficult thing about the whirlwind when it comes to this industry, is these things that get on your radar truly are urgent. Like when I say not looking at the software, we have to have a system because if you're not in the pet care industry, you're like, dogs, so sweet. And if you are in the pet care industry, you know, it can be life or death. Did they get that medication? Did the walker successfully get to the appointment and started? Was the animal seen? Was the animal healthy? There's so many more considerations. And so the influx of constant information has to be processed. We realistically can't just step away. That makes the getting stuck in the whirlwind a really realistic sticking place for a lot of business owners, especially in this level where it's really difficult to afford admin because these things have to be dealt with. It's not like owners in this phase are just not allocating time well. It really comes down to systems, and it comes down to, I think in this stage, efficiency in processing that work and really protecting windows of time so that you do have time to work on the business. So that's the first risk to be aware of, is getting stuck in that I'm always dealing with urgent little fires and I never have time to actually build to the next level. I am going to go over strategy at the end of this episode, so hang in there. There's more to come, and I will speak specifically to some strategies on protecting windows of time so that you don't get all the way submerged in the whirlwind. All right, second risk is going to be a decline in the client experience as you are growing. So in this season of the business, 100,000 to 200,000, depending on how you're building the business, how quickly you're scaling, it is not uncommon that businesses at this size really lack a lot of systems because the owner has been so in it that even as you're starting to build a team, it's like, well, I can just show you what I do. And so the lack of systemization, the lack of standardization as you start growing your team, and especially if you really start picking up speed, which I do see companies in this stage, they can really accelerate. They have a bigger client base. They're starting to get more word of mouth. They are focused on growing. And so it's like sometimes this season escalates really quickly. And so with the lack of systems, if that is the reality for your business in this season, it can make it feel really chaotic. I like to describe it as this can be a season where it feels like herding cats a little bit. It's like, I have a staff member doing that. That is not what you were supposed to be doing. And we're constantly trying to pull them in to get them refocused, and it bottlenecks everything around us. So that is something to keep an eye on, is starting to look at what are the patterns of where things go wrong. Are there ways I can escalate my own understanding of what systems I need? This actually is a huge reason that I started DogCo, is because I saw a hole in the available resources to the industry. So if you work with me, this is not a pitch, but if you work with me at any point in time, I always include all of my SOPs. It's like 70 to 80 documents that really break down step by step. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do this. Because they took so long to write, they took so long to define, that investing in resources like that, whether or not it's mine or with another coach or, wherever you're able to invest in them, can help you get through some of this lack of systemization that can keep you really stuck here. How do we train people? Do we have a defined way that we train them? Do we have a defined way that we evaluate the success of their work? All of that you can get a launch pad from somewhere else. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just my small plug, because honestly, in hindsight, I'm really thankful I didn't do that because it forced me to build them myself so that I now have DogCo. But I could have gone a lot faster and a lot less pain if I had invested in those resources elsewhere. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so a decline in client experience. That's really going to be clients starting to feel the fragmentation, starting to feel the stress of the lack of systems. They won't be able to articulate it that way, but you'll start seeing inconsistencies in what clients are receiving. You'll start having clients be upset because it's like, well, this thing happened and how did this happen? And, on our end, we're like, well, it just happened. The staff member made a choice because we don't have enough regulation and oversight yet into our team. Okay, And then the third biggest risk in this season, from what I have seen, is the owner not stepping back enough for field work and keeping too much of the field work centered around them. Now, hear me. I understand the realities of the finances. You got to take care of yourself. And so this is not like a criticism if you feel stuck. That is a reality, the financial component. And until we free up enough of your time to work to get to the next level, you're gonna stay in this cycle of I'm in the field, I'm finally out of the field a little bit, I've bottlenecked the field around myself again, I've reinserted myself, and that's really going to slow down your progress. I recommend if this is a season you can run really lean financially, personally, which is what I did. I was like, okay, this is just gonna be a really lean season for us. I knew to the dollar how much I needed to be able to pay myself out of the business and how many visits that meant I still had to do so that I could start really working myself back out, because my business didn't really start growing until I was able to really focus on growing it. Where we put our attention, where we put our focus is where we will see the growth. Maybe not immediately, but over time. It's a balancing act for sure. It can feel a little bit like a chicken and an egg scenario. We just have to figure out how to get more out of the field. Okay, so let me talk about some solutions now that I've fully painted the picture of this scaling phase and where I see companies kind of in this phase. So solution, and some of this depends on what you want to solve for, what you want out of your business. So hear me, there are a lot of caveats to that, but from the seat I sit in, few solutions. So number one, I talked about getting stuck in the whirlwind, and we have to have protected windows of time for you to actually work on your business. If you are going to be in the whirlwind all day long, and we know that, then we have to find a window that's protected. For me, that window still, because I actually feel like I'm in a bit of a whirlwind season now with my business, like I'm in the equivalent of this for digital coaching. So that window for me is 5 to 7 a.m. That's going to be a window of time where it's quiet, there aren't expectations on me, and I know I can actually focus on work that is going to move the business forward. You may not be a morning person. I am not saying that is the only window of time that works. I work with some companies where their business building time is 2 to 5 p.m. They know it's going to be a quieter window for the business. That is not my ideal time frame. At that point, my brain's trying to power itself down. But, there are many options, but we have to have windows of time. There is going to be a temptation to push the work away until we have huge windows of time. Like, I just need several days to sit down and do this. I want to gently push you. I'm 10 years in on entrepreneurship, and it is so rare that I actually have a full day to focus on something. So rare. I think there's so much that we can achieve with 1 to 3 hour windows of time if we use them efficiently. My goal in this season of my business was one thing every day, just one thing that compounds on itself, that moves us forward, and that is the goal. Okay, the second thing, looking at the relationship of field work to bringing people on the team. There are a couple different ways that I see people approach this phase that I really think determine the trajectory you're going to be on. So the first thing that I sometimes see companies do is basically they still treat it like they're a solopreneur. It's like, I'm going to keep myself full-time clients, and then I'm just going to give excess to staff. That is short-term going to be a lot more financially profitable for you. It's going to really slow down your trajectory through this stage. So there's a cost benefit there. If, you have really high personal expenses and it's like, I just have to do it this way. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying it comes at a trade. And it comes at a cost. And the second pathway I'm going to present does as well. That's a lot of business is, where do our resources go and how do we organize them to get where we want to go? And everything comes at a cost. Everything comes with a trade. So when we are looking at that first pathway, you make more money for sure. You get to stay with the clients, which some people really enjoy. They really want to stay in the field. And if we're just giving people leftover work, and work, as we know in this industry, kind of ebbs and flows, then It's going to be difficult to get really consistent people. It's going to be difficult to retain people. It's going to be difficult to get them to take this more seriously as a job, which I know in our industry that can be a struggle, just because it's clear they're just here to support your work. They're not here to really come in as a service provider. So the second pathway that I see companies do that I personally did is in this stage, basically you take the scraps, you take the leftovers. We are going to hire and equip other people for their work. We are going to give them as much as we possibly can. And then we are going to be the fill-in and the excess and the buffer to bring in more, which is going to keep us focused on staffing and hiring so that we can always be positioned to take more. We are the overflow. The cost of this second pathway is that it does require you to run financially lean and to have this like comfort and variability, because really what you're doing is giving your staff stability in the second pathway. You're saying, I'm going to, for a season, carry the instability of the growth, the instability of the new client acquisition, the instability of the hours and the jobs that are available. Like, I'm just going to take the overflow. And again, you got to eat. So within the balance of how you can configure this. And I'm going to equip my staff with stability, which is going to get me more serious people. It's going to help affect my retention in a positive way. And it's going to let me build this more quickly. Now, if you want to supercharge this strategy, what I did was focus really specifically on dog walking. I had a dog walking only business by the time I sold it. When I was in this revenue phase, actually, I was full service. But I still focused on growing dog walking specifically. And what I would do is I would fill up my middays with 4 to 6 clients. And then I would hire somebody for shifts. And I'd say, these are your clients, these are your hours. Looking forward, I did go team-based, but this helped me get off the ground. And that let me give people really consistent work, really consistent hours. It let me grow a really strong dog walking client base to my business. And then I did a season of a lot of pet sitting personally to make the money I needed to make to get through this season. That let me personally hustle for the pet sitting, which wasn't as difficult to acquire. It let me focus all of my marketing strategy on the dog walking. It helped improve my staff retention because they had really consistent hours, really consistent pay. If I'm sitting down with the company and designing out how to get through this season, that's really what it's going to look like for me, for my recommendation. I do recommend you go as fast as you possibly can through this phase. To be totally honest, this phase, it's just a tough one. I talked about that for like the first 20 minutes of this podcast, so I won't go back into it. But the faster you can hit this phase to get through it, the more relief is on the other side, in my experience. So I recommend pathway 2. You really center the stability for your staff. You do what you need to do to get through this season. I would recommend focusing on those dog walking clients, building up these regular routes and schedules, and then hiring to hand off. The third thing that I recommend for getting through this season is going to be in the system. So I already talked about investing when you can and when that makes sense. But I would just encourage you, like this season, you are going to have to wear 2 hats. You're going to need to be both the field labor and both the boss and the business builder. And there will come a day where you can take off the field hat. You can be the business owner, business strategist, resource allocator, full-time. And it's a balancing act, and it's going to feel like you're pulling double duty. I believe that there are some seasons in the business that need that from us, which is why I want you to get through the season as quickly as you can so that there's more kind of like light and enjoyment and just a little more breathing room for you. But it's going to require double duty. And so I would just encourage you from a solution standpoint to not fight against that, but to lean in and to really give this season what it needs so that you can move past it. Because there's so much cool stuff. And I don't want to see you get stuck here because this is a revenue level that traps a lot of owners. from being able to move forward due to the bottlenecks that I presented. All right, I hope this was helpful. I'd really love some feedback on this series, on if you're resonating, on if things are striking you as like, oh my gosh, I identify so much with that, or, that really hasn't been my experience. This is a working project for me, and so I would love all the feedback. All right, everyone, I will see you in the next episode.